This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The WHO approved Sinovac COVID vaccine, making it the second Chinese-made dose listed. Uganda minister's daughter killed in a failed assassination attempt. And in our continuing series on kidnappings in Nigeria, we'll look at key factors contributing to the rise of abductions in that country. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. OPEC Plus agreed to boost production levels in July as crude prices rebound over 2.5-year highs. And a combination of high demand and global drought sparks an increase in maize prices in South Africa. We'll have the data and the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thanks, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Let's begin the hour with the World Health Organization, which has approved a second Chinese-developed vaccine for emergency use. It says the decision was based on the review of the vaccine's quality, safety, and efficacy data. Sinovac is the seventh vaccine to get the global regulator's seal of approval. Earlier in May, another Chinese vaccine, Sinopharm, was granted emergency use authorization by the WHO.
This afternoon, WHO gave emergency use listing to Sinopharm Beijing's COVID-19 vaccine, making it the sixth vaccine to receive WHO validation for safety, efficacy, and quality. This expands the list of vaccines that COVAX can buy and gives countries confidence to expedite their own regulatory approval and to import and administer a vaccine.
We have information that the vaccine is useful for people above 18 years of age. And as the person asking the question said, the information we have for people over 60 is still very scarce. There is no reason to think that the vaccine would behave differently in this older age group. And in fact, in many countries in the world where the vaccine is already being used, this group has already been vaccinated.
Meanwhile, a new study says the COVID-19 vaccine produced by China's Sinovac biotech has reduced deaths by 95% in Ceará, a city in the southeastern Brazilian state of Sao Paulo. The figures come from a study by Brazil's Instituto Butantan. On Tuesday, Sinovac explained the results, saying almost all of the adult population of Ceará, some 27,000 people, were vaccinated between February and April. The data shows the number of symptomatic cases fell by 80% and hospitalizations fell by 86%. The study also finds that the spread of the virus was contained when 75% of the population had been inoculated. Sinovac says it had supplied over 600 million doses of its COVID-19 vaccine to over 40 countries by the end of May. The company says the study proves the vaccine's effectiveness against the major coronavirus variant in the city, which also had been reported in over 37 countries.
In Brazil and many other places in the world, more and more coronavirus variants have been reported. In Ceará, from this March to May, the P.1 variant was dominant. Earlier, people worried whether the vaccine would still be effective against the variants. Our study proves our vaccine has very good effects against the variants in Brazil, especially the P.1.
Foreign ministers of the world's 5 major emerging economies, known as the Brics grouping, have held a virtual meeting. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa discussed COVID-19 cooperation, multilateralism, and countering terrorism. Sui Huawei has more.
Tuesday's meeting was chaired by Indian External Affairs Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar. In their opening remarks, the other 4 ministers expressed their condolences for India, which has been hit hard by a deadly second wave of COVID-19, reporting over 27 million cases and almost 330,000 deaths. And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said not just India, but All Brics countries have been hit hard and affected by the pandemic. As we know, this year marks the 15th anniversary of the group's establishment, and Wang Yi says the key to get through current challenges intact is to maintain solidarity.
Our cooperation mechanism has been continuously improved and expanded. International influence has been increasing, especially in areas like the economy, trade and finance, political security, and people-to-people exchanges. This has set an example of cooperation among emerging markets and countries. Facing the pandemic, the Brics countries have demonstrated resilience and vitality and maintained the momentum of cooperation. This has provided an important example not only for our 5 countries, but the world in the fight against the pandemic and restoring the economies.
The 5 ministers say there are many challenges facing the world. One is the lack of coronavirus vaccines for developing countries. India and South Africa have proposed for WHO waiver of patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov mentioned challenges such as climate change and cross-national crime. This is why all 5 ministers agreed that a rule-based international system should be strengthened. For example, Lavrov said the current system has been eroded by some countries, and his view is echoed by Wang Yi, who said certain countries are adopting fake multilateralism, which puts their own interest above all else. One major outcome of the meeting is a joint communiqué issued by the ministers. The communiqué calls for constructing a more just and inclusive international system, one that is based on international law and the UN Charter, not rules set by a minority of countries, and also reaffirmed the principle of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs. CGTN, Guiyang.
The Ugandan army says investigations have begun into Tuesday's shooting of a former Ugandan Minister of Works and Transport. General Katumba Wamala is being treated in a local hospital, but his driver and daughter were killed in that attack. Isabel Nakiria reports.
A somber mood at the scene of the shooting outside the capital, Kampala. The former Minister of Works and Chief of Defense Forces, General Katumba Wamala, sustained injuries to both his shoulders. General Katumba is said to be out of danger after surgery to remove the bullets that were lodged in his arms. The army says investigations are going on.
We already have links. We already have phone calls that were made, phone calls that can be traced.
President Yoweri Museveni tweeted condemning the killing of General Katumba's daughter and driver. He referred to the killers as terrorists who deserve to die. Several people have been arrested in connection with the investigations. Witnesses say men riding on a motorcycle sprayed bullets at General Katumba Wamala's car, injuring him and killing his daughter and driver.
The people who shot at the general must have been well trained. All I can say is that it was very scary.
General Katumba was in charge of the first African Union deployment in Somalia as a commander of the land forces of Uganda. Killings of high-ranking officials have happened before in Uganda. A magistrate, a police spokesperson and top supporter of President Yoweri Museveni were all gunned down in similar ways in the past 10 years, as well as several Muslim clerics. Investigations have never been completed. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Egypt's Suez Canal Authority says it has reduced the amount of money it is seeking compensation from the owner of the Ever Given ship that blocked the busy waterway in March. Egyptian authorities have been holding the ship since that incident. Egypt is now asking for $550 million, down from the $916 million it had earlier demanded. Here's Adel Amrouhi with the details.
It's been 2 months since Egypt rescued the Ever Given ship that had been stuck in the Suez Canal, restoring navigation to the crucial waterway after a 6-day blockage. Yet the ship, its containers and the crew are still in Egyptian custody, as negotiations with the owner failed to lead to an agreement on the compensation the Egyptian authorities are demanding.
We have received an official letter from the ship's owner. In it, the company commended the efforts that the Suez Canal team made to rescue the ship. They have offered $150 million. The negotiating committee, however, does not see that as a sufficient figure. We look forward to a bigger figure. The negotiations are proceeding with respect between both sides. Nonetheless, the fate of the ship and the goods it is carrying are the same. They will be released together.
After estimating the value of the goods on board the Ever Given at $3 billion, Egypt primarily asked for $916 million in compensation. It decreased its demands to $550 million after the ship's owner proved that the value of the goods aboard the ship was $775 million. The Suez Canal Authority says investigations concluded that the ship's captain was responsible for the blockage that interrupted global supply chains.
The ship's captain takes the decision of entering the waterway or not. The wind speed was 10 to 12 meters a second, which is about 20 knots. The ship's data records show that for 1 minute 35 seconds, the speed went up to over 40 knots. There were 3 ships in front of the Ever Given with a similar load. They all passed normally. Nothing links the Suez Canal with the incident. Our guide's role on the ship is to just offer suggestions. The captain is the sole decision maker. He could ask the guide to keep quiet if he wanted.
Suez Canal Authority officials say they can release the ship once a payment of at least $200 million is made, provided that the owner of the ship gives guarantees that the balance of the demanded compensation could be paid later. To prove its willingness to resolve the crisis, Egypt announced that it won't resort to international arbitration. Suez Canal Authority has also provided all its investigation documents and the data recorder's information to the Japanese owner and the International Maritime Organization to maintain that its investigations are transparent. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Countries around the world are marking International Children's Day. As the day is being observed, we take a look at how the Egyptian government has intensified its efforts to assist children, partly through the support of NGOs. Yasser Hakim reports from Cairo.
NGOs have been predominantly involved in social welfare programs over the last 3 decades. The health sector has been a big beneficiary of NGO activities, with several children's hospitals costing hundreds of millions of dollars having been set up. Most notable among them are the 57357 Cancer Hospital in Cairo, the largest of its kind in the Middle East. Al-Nas Hospital, which broke the record of carrying out 300 heart surgeries for children in 1 month, and the Al-Orman Children's Heart Hospital in Luxor in Upper Egypt.
This children's hospital is equipped with the latest medical equipment, best hospitality service, most updated surgeries and treatment. All this is free of charge.
Al-Orman, like many NGOs, has been around for only 27 years, but it has been very productive, researching, connecting with the community, and addressing its dire needs. The NGOs are pivotal in implementing social programs such as developing poor villages and families. They are helping us combat poverty by improving health services, educational services, and overall living conditions.
All these facilities are built and operated through donations. All treatments and surgeries are free. There's also a growing number of orphanages receiving backing from the government to ensure proper services for children who've lost their parents.
We continuously honor the orphanages that have been successful in helping children, and we always visit different orphanages to oversee the services they provide. We provide NGOs with all technical, financial and logistical support for the orphanages. We facilitate the documentation and daily work. Some orphanages also receive financial aid to pay salaries for their employees.
More NGOs are also working with the government to take homeless children away from the streets.
Each unit includes a coordinator, psychologist, physiologist, a physical therapist, a doctor and a driver. We go to where the children are, we learn why they live in the streets and what they face. We connect with them, study each case and try to unite them with their families. If it's not possible, we take them to care centers to improve their lives, education and health conditions till we find their families.
With economic hardships taking their toll on Egyptians, the role of NGOs has become even more critical in providing much-needed support to the predominantly poor population. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, as we know, International Children's Day is once again being observed under the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the UN, children continue to bear the brunt of the pandemic. 18 months after it first emerged, education systems have been disrupted across the world. In countries like South Africa, poverty and hunger have worsened. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Children in South Africa and other parts of the continent have been fairly resilient to COVID-19. But they bear the brunt of stretched healthcare systems, disrupted schooling and erratic nutrition programs.
And when this lockdown happened, what you started to see, not in South Africa, but certainly in different parts of the continent, is a rise in child marriages. You see children being brought into military groups. You see children going into labor, into forced labor, and not going back to school. That a lot of children are dropping out from school.
Not every learner came back, and we just want to account in terms of the numbers. How many are we talking about, and what are the plans moving forward for us to make sure that probably we find those children to bring them back into the system.
It's estimated South African schools have fallen behind by at least 3 years. There are plans to return lower levels to everyday schooling from July for the first time in over a year.
We are concerned, most especially about your primary school level, because there you need children to be supervised. They need to be attended to. The online is not effective really on your primary level. So when we open for term 3 late in July, the primary schools are coming back, all of them.
Rapidly rising levels of unemployment have also made children a lot more vulnerable at home.
We have huge anxieties in households, worrying about the future. And when people worry about the future and they don't have enough to eat and they're cloistered together, your chances of violence happening increase dramatically. So we've seen this whole range of rights being impacted, but our concern right now, especially in Child Protection Week, is around violence and what's happening to children behind closed doors.
Children's rights organizations are optimistic a well-thought-out plan will be able to alleviate some of the setbacks caused by the pandemic. This will ensure the gains made over the last decades in creating safer and better spaces for young people will not be reversed. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Time now for us to take a short break and return. In our continuing series of kidnappings in Nigeria, we look at key factors contributing to the rise of abductions in that country.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, there are mounting fears that Nigeria's high unemployment rate is driving young people towards criminal activities such as robberies and kidnappings. The government is under mounting pressure to address youth joblessness so as to shield young people from being tempted into joining criminal gangs and extremist groups. Correspondent Sema Kende reports.
Mudi Madanjuma is a graduate of environmental engineering. He has been unemployed since he got his university degree 11 years ago. He now earns $20 a month teaching primary school children and says it's frustrating.
You see, that one was underemployed or not employed, but never, hardly would you once say I really had a satisfactory job based on what I targeted.
Millions of young Nigerians like Mudima are unemployed. The country's Bureau of Statistics puts the unemployment rate at 32.5% in 2021. It's a leap from 27.1% in the previous year.
You know, when the society fails to provide the necessary infrastructure, in place for people to get employed, people are creative, so they'll create ways with which they can be able to make ends meet for them.
Moody Madanjuma says some young people have been tempted to join criminal gangs.
The youths specifically are into banditry, kidnapping, doing one form of negative vice or the other. And then it's really paying. People are cashing out, making money, living life as good as it can be.
Both young and old people have been victims of crimes such as robbery and kidnapping for ransom in Nigeria. States in the country's north, such as Kaduna, Niger, Zamfara, and Katsina, have been badly hit by such incidents. Governors of the state say that apart from efforts by federal authorities to protect lives and property, a consistent regional approach to insecurity is also needed. But Mudima says other young people like him are determined not to break the law. He attributes that attitude to a good upbringing and the hope that things might get better.
There are a lot of expectations from you, family, those who invested in you. When you see those things going on, you really want to go into, anyhow you make it, but then it's a thing of discipline. Okay, this is it. Subsequently, we still trying to hang on with the hope that things will get better somehow, some way.
The Nigerian government is championing initiatives such as graduate internship programs and financial support for small-scale businesses to address the widespread unemployment. And it hopes such efforts will engage more young people and that the crime rate in the country will drop. Tessim Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
If you look at Northeast Nigeria, Northwest Nigeria, we are having poverty rate above 80%. And in fact, if you look among the youth population, the figure is even quite stark. So the implication of all of this is attractiveness of violent crime, attractiveness of some of these social challenges. It's there because there is no economic opportunity for people to take up and change their life. So not providing good opportunity, not providing a channel of transition from education system into labor market, it's one problem. If you look at how the schools set up in most of these states or in most of these villages and communities, schools are mostly set up at the border before you enter into the community. So in a way, it's quite isolated, and those are kind of easy targets for them to easily kidnap and take them to a place where they can start negotiating with government. And you can see most of the kidnapping cases do. It takes place at night, such that students in boarding school, they were attacked at the middle of the night, kidnapped and taken away. So those kind of very low-hanging kind of opportunities, I think they've tapped into it, into the school children kidnapping. So that also makes school children a major target. But we need to improve our school system. But I mean, it's not enough to get kids to school. We need to actually have solid learning taking place in our schools, because if they are rightly educated, they can create opportunities for themselves. But also, I mean, government needs to also expand this kind of, how do we ensure, what are the kind of problems that are limiting economic growth? What are the kind of bottlenecks? I mean, a lot of issue around energy, infrastructure, and the rest. We need to provide that to ensure that entrepreneurial ecosystem in Nigeria is well developed, grown, and we were able to, because I mean, we need to be we need to be creating more jobs, we need to be creating more opportunities. That is when people coming out of the education system will get jobs. And also people that are not even yet in the education, it will be an attractiveness to say, okay, I could see people migrating from school to a better livelihood. I think school is the right channel to do it. So in a way, developing school system, ensuring better integration of school to labor market, expand the opportunities for entrepreneur ecosystem to grow and develop. Those are the kind of critical things. But regarding school children kidnapping, I think we need to do more. This is an unconventional kind of attack on the state. And in that kind of unconventional warfare, we need intelligence. Intelligence is the main and the most important thing. And how do you secure intelligence from the community?
Let's head over to East Africa now. And when people in Kenya think of grand train journeys, memories of traveling aboard night trains come to mind. Some remember traveling across some of Kenya's iconic national parks, like the Tsavo East National Park, where hearing sounds made by animals at night. But only a few years ago, it appeared that the old golden days of night train travel had completely died. That was until the Chinese-built standard gauge railway linking Nairobi and Mombasa reintroduced that experience this year. CGTN's Enoch Sekolia recently enjoyed a night train ride, and he shared his experience with us.
Train travel is becoming an iconic way to navigate Kenya's landscape. Night trains are a great way to make the most out of your travel from Nairobi to Mombasa or vice versa. They are quite affordable and more comfortable than buses. And with the climate crisis worsening, they are a great environmentally friendly option as well. Since they were introduced in January this year, night trains are becoming popular among Kenyans who live in Nairobi and Mombasa. Tonight, I'm joining lovers of night travel to see and feel what makes them pick a train. Now it's time to get a train to Mombasa. Departure time is 10 p.m. and we'll be on the train for the next 6 hours.
I'm actually surprised. I thought I was to come to do a lot of work here, but it's quite conveniencing.
Is it your first time to do a night train?
Yeah, this is my first time. Of course, we want to have a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We are a team of guys who just want to have a lot of fun.
As we continue chatting with Stephen Wainaina, I realize that most of the travelers here believe that the best part of night trains is that it saves you a night of accommodation. Simple. While you still need to buy a ticket, you will not be using up a day of travel to get to a new destination, as you will be covering your distance at night.
It's convenience because of the booking time, the other side. Because if you, for example, if I was to travel by the 3 p.m. train, it meant that I had to spend somewhere before I book, I check into my hotel.
I have a few friends and I think we're going to enjoy the train at night, yeah.
Most of these people are also looking for viable alternatives to driving and flying when going on holiday or traveling from Nairobi to the Kenyan coast or the other way round.
My name is Naushad Ayub. I work with Steel Wool Africa and I'm dispatch manager there. And we're visiting for my son's occasion. There's small functions we want to hold there. And we choose to, travel with SGR. Most probably, conveniently, that we felt that it's more faster and more company, and it's not my first time. And I've been traveling like this is my third time traveling with SGR.
Have you ever traveled at night? Is it your first time?
No. 2 times I've traveled daytime, and that I felt also is it takes too long, and we get tired, like just sitting. So we decided to have a try at nighttime, and we see how it goes.
So it's your first time
at night? Yes, sir.
It's clear that families and friends traveling together are becoming one of the most important target groups for night trains.
I usually use buses, but buses used to take at that time like 10 hours. So 10 hours sitting in one place, it becomes uncomfortable as well.
My name is Faisal Sirosiro.
How is work?
Our work is okay. As you can see, this is the night train to Mombasa. The passengers are cool, and we're hoping for a good journey to Mombasa.
Do you love it?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's interesting. At first, it was a bit of an hassle, but right now, we have adapted and everything is okay.
According to AfriStar, the move to introduce the night train was a way of complementing the demand that was there as more Kenyans opted for the train travel. The night trains are a third pair of passenger trains on the standard gauge railway that was launched on the 4th of January 2021. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Mombasa, Kenya.
China and Egypt are this week celebrating 65 years of bilateral relations. Their formal ties began on the 30th of May, 1956, with Egypt becoming the first Arab and African country to recognize and establish diplomatic relations with China. Yasser Kim sheds light on the cultural relationship between the both countries.
It's only natural that two nations with a long history and deep-rooted civilizations would have strong cultural ties. Amongst other milestones, Egypt established the first Chinese cultural center in the Middle East and Africa back in 2002. It also set up the first Chinese language department in a university in the region, and now Mandarin is taught in Egyptian schools as well.
The cultural relations are so vital. Formal relations were established in May 1956, but before, in March of that year, a Chinese cultural delegation visited Egypt for 1 month, and before signing the diplomatic agreement, a cultural agreement was signed first. So cultural relations have led to diplomatic ties. In the last 4 years alone, our cultural center has organized more than 300 events in Egypt. A main event we participate in for decades is the renowned Cairo Book Fair, where Chinese publishing houses always seek to join and be active. This proves that we view Egypt as a beacon of culture for the whole region and worldwide. Our cultural exchange has helped strengthen our political, economic and other ties.
2016 was chosen as the China-Egypt Cultural Year, and it coincided with the visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping to Egypt. Since then, cultural relations have further improved, and cultural activities have also increased.
The visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping to Egypt was the first of its kind in about 16 years. It has opened the door for promoting ties in culture, tourism, economy, and scientific research. The Chinese people here feel they are at home, not strangers, because the habits, traditions, and family values are quite similar with the Egyptian people, and this makes cultural closeness between China and Egypt easier.
A Chinese Cultural Day, the Chinese Fair, and Chinese Film Week became fixed annual events in Egypt. The coronavirus has had an impact on all forms of life. However, it did not prevent both sides from continuing their cultural exchange and activities. Events have just taken a different form in line with anti-COVID-19 regulations.
The coronavirus has affected the cultural exchange, but we still organized many cultural activities in the last year, such as Egypt Sings Festival, a competition for the best article on China, art exhibitions, and other activities that took place online.
Despite the coronavirus-related travel restrictions, Chinese actors and movie producers attended the Cairo International Film Festival last December, sending a message of cultural solidarity with Egypt going forward. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The Chinese Communist Party has made remarkable progress in uplifting China's economy and people out of poverty and stands as a practical example for African nations. This is according to Zimbabwe's former ambassador to China, Christopher Mutsvangwa. CGTN's Farai Mokutuya spoke to him about the Chinese Communist Party's 100th anniversary and the leadership of President Xi Jinping.
President Xi came to Harare en route to the FOCAC summit in 2015. How significant was that? What were your impressions of him from that?
When he was going to attend the China-Africa summit in Johannesburg, I think it was in 2015, he made it a point of making Zimbabwe stop over. You know, it means he cherishes the bilateral relationships which were started by Chairman Mao and Chu Enlai in the 1960s and our Chairman Herbert Chitepo. and the likes of our General Tongogara and of course our present President Emerson E.D. Mnangagwa, who was trained as a young man of a fledgling nationalist guerrilla army in Nanjing in the 1960s. So he puts a premium on the relationships between Zimbabwe and China, and that trip, that stopover for a few hours, was a remarkable show of a gesture of solidarity with Zimbabwe. He's a modest man who is passionate about the role of China, but who is also very, very internationalistic in his outlook, as has been espoused in his Belt and Road Initiative. This is a good leader who we all would be happy to be associated with.
What have been your impressions of President Xi Jinping's leadership over the past years?
President Xi has been very good at digging into the history of China from the experience of the previous leaders of the Chinese Communist Party in the last 100 years, but more so since the triumph of the revolution. And he has taken the best aspects of his mentors, the Communist part of China, the various from Chairman Mao, Deng Xiaoping, and the other modern leaders. He has gleaned from them and built a corpus of knowledge which has made him make China scale the challenge of modernization. Now China is focusing on the key technologies of the future so that the economy of China can deliver more, not only to the Chinese people, but to the world. His Belt and Road initiative on how we should integrate and share the development experience of the whole world in a global village is a remarkable philosophy of how humanity should approach the shared challenges of how we can integrate and increase prosperity, shared prosperity by humanity.
Tunisia, like many countries across the globe, is marking the International Children's Day amid the coronavirus pandemic. The ministry in charge of children's rights says the COVID-19 crisis has had a negative impact on children's health, education, and socioeconomic rights. Many of them have been unable to continue learning as the pandemic takes its toll. Anin Shuashi reports.
The Tunisian Minister of Women, Family, Child and Elderly Affairs says her department is tackling inequality in education during the COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities say homeschooling and distance learning amid the pandemic is not possible for many children who do not have access to the internet and computers.
Tunisia is one of the leading nations in children's rights. We have the Child Protection and Rights Code. We also signed up to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The legal and institutional system protects children. However, the economic crisis has put pressure on the government and affected our kids. Unfortunately, we are unable to provide equal chance education during the pandemic, but we are looking for solutions.
The Children's Rights Observatory has revealed that Tunisia's school dropout rate has been on the rise since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country in March 2020.
This alarming phenomenon is caused by socio-economic reasons, but also due to the impacts of the pandemic. More than 100,000 children abandon school annually. We don't even know what they are doing because these children don't join the vocational training facilities. They don't have health insurance and access to basic treatment at school. They are at risk of homelessness and economic exploitation.
Dr. Muaz Sharif is the president of the Tunisian Association for the Defense of the Rights of the Child. The pediatric surgeon is worried about the resurgence of many infectious diseases.
Health services for children have deteriorated in Tunisia. The resurgence of infectious diseases which disappeared for decades is dangerous. For example, the measles resurgence is alarming. Hepatitis A has spread in many regions due to poor sanitary conditions and a lack of clean water in schools.
The health department says children are also prone to coronavirus infection. A 30-day-old baby recently succumbed to COVID-19 in the capital city, Tunis. Some 50 to 60 children testing positive for COVID-19 have been hospitalized in Tunisia. Health authorities say 15% of children and infants infected with coronavirus had symptoms ranging from severe to moderate. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you the latest in sport, but for now, let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business. It's Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. The OPEC Plus group agrees to boost production levels in July as crude prices soar to a 2.5-year high. High demand and global drought sparks an increase in maize prices in South Africa. The details coming up next.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Let's start in the world of energy. The world's most powerful oil producers have agreed to continue gradually easing production cuts amid a sharp rebound in oil prices. OPEC and its oil-producing allies, collectively known as OPEC Plus, do continue to plan raising oil output in June and July in accordance with the group's April decision to raise supply by 2.1 million barrels a day between May and July. Now, the production policy beyond July, however, has not yet been agreed to, but the group will meet again on the 1st of July to decide that. Brent crude did breach the $71 a barrel mark on Tuesday. It's the first time it's actually done that this year. It went as high as $71.31 before paring those gains. WTI crude futures went as high as $68.87, up over 2.25% as both oil benchmarks scaled 2.5-year highs. At these levels, Brent and WTI futures have gone up by 37% and 40% respectively just this year. Now, a global surge in the price of maize, partly driven by higher import demand from China, droughts in South America and dry conditions in parts of the United States and Canada have combined to raise local maize prices in South Africa. And that's despite expectations of a bumper harvest in the 2020-2021 season. Elevated prices for the staple crop in South Africa are squeezing cash-strapped consumers in an economy which has shed nearly 1.4 million jobs in the 12 months to end March. Here's Angela Coppola with the details.
Analysts say there are several reasons for these elevated maize prices: regional and global demand, and the local exchange rate to the US dollar.
Now, the exchange rate has been firming. If you compare where we are this year in the rand to the dollar compared to last year, these are stronger levels, which means that they point to a potential decline in prices. And in terms of a demand, Southern Africa demand, which was one of the key factors that was driving prices last year, is now very weak this year, with Zimbabwe having record harvest, Malawi good harvest, and across the Southern Africa region.
The impact of rising maize prices on South African consumers has been pronounced. They're not alone.
But also it's adding the increasing input cost pressures on the producers of the livestock sector as well as the poultry sectors. As early as mid-May, companies like Astral Foods in South Africa were already signaling that they might be rising poultry prices because of the higher input costs which are coming from the grain. So for consumers in the near term, this shows that there will be those increasing pressures.
If estimates are accurate and the South African maize crop is a good one, it's good news for the country.
As the harvest picks up momentum, we could see maize prices softening to an extent that we estimate South Africa's food price inflation for the year to average around 5.5%.
While those prices are soaring because of international pressures, it's likely that consumers here will feel a bit of relief towards the end of the year. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Away from commodities, earlier on Tuesday, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi took part in a virtual ministerial meeting of the world's 5 large emerging economies. In the end-of-meeting communique, the foreign ministers reiterated their support for the ongoing consideration of a waiver on the intellectual property rights associated with COVID-19 vaccines at the WTO, as well as the need to share vaccine doses with the countries that need them the most and to develop a lot more local vaccine production capacity. India and Brazil, both members of the Brics, are among the top 3 countries hardest hit by the pandemic. Between them, they have 44.7 million active cases and nearly 795,000 deaths attributable to COVID-19. Authorities in Turkey, in the meantime, are starting to ease pandemic restrictions. The country recently ended a 2.5-week national lockdown, which did help to lower the number of new COVID-19 infections. Here's CGTN's Michal Badavid with the details.
Following a cabinet meeting on Monday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced new COVID-19 measures. Erdogan said these new restrictions would be in place for the entire month of June. Daily curfews have been pushed to start at 10 p.m. instead of 9. Weekend lockdowns would now only be imposed on Sundays. Some relief for the food industry, as restaurants will be allowed to open and serve customers until 9 p.m. and provide takeout until midnight. Other businesses such as coffee houses, gyms and amusement parks will also reopen. And good news for couples waiting to get married, weddings are allowed starting Tuesday as well. The government is hoping to support the decrease in COVID-19 case numbers by speeding up the vaccination program in June. This week, those over the age of 50 are getting their vaccine shots. The announcement comes on the same day Turkey and Greece agreed to recognize each other's COVID-19 vaccine or proof of a negative COVID-19 test. The move could boost both countries' tourism industries as the summer season begins. I'm Michal Badavid for CGTN in Antalya.
One last story for you, this one from Zimbabwe. On paper, the Southern African country has the potential to earn at least $1 billion a year from horticultural exports. The government there has rolled out a national strategy that incorporates rural farmers in order to achieve that goal. As CGTN's Farai Mokhtar now reports, Zimbabwe is aiming to become the continental food exporting powerhouse it once was.
It's rapid, non-stop and thorough work on Churchill Farm as harvesting of Mange 2 peas is underway. 13 hectares of the crop have been grown here, all of it for export. Consignments of the freshest vegetables are dispatched from this packhouse 3 times a week, destined for markets in Europe. But there are plans actively underway to open up new territories. Lucrative orders have come in from the United Arab Emirates.
The contract that we've got at the moment with United Arab Emirates is got to do with garlic, it's got to do with ginger, it's got to do with potatoes, it's got to do with onions and so forth. Those we can give to small-scale farmers because we will not be able to grow them on our own farms because of rotations as well. And the numbers are big. We're talking between 5,000, 10,000 tons, and that cannot be grown on one crop. So we see this as an opportunity that's going to open for us in Zimbabwe, which is a big window for outgrowers.
Expanding hectarage and inclusivity fits into a national strategy to expand production from 2020 levels.
We're on 114,000 tons with a value at around $77 million. And we obviously projecting that we can triple that in the next 3 years. It's critical for us to have all farmers on board. So we're very much focused on developing new farmers. It depends, and also there are sort of sector specific. So we're not trying to say farmers who have been subsistence farmers must come on board and export blueberries. It's not going to happen like that. But we will definitely support in the crops that make sense financially and where we can lobby and represent those farmers.
The horticulture industry wants government to speed up trade negotiations and finalize protocols with key markets like China, as well as ease export processes which will enable farmers to be competitive. That, combined with a favorable climate, will help the country quickly reap the low-hanging fruit that the sector represents for the economy. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Marondera, Zimbabwe.
And we'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be heading to South Africa. Some grim macro data coming out of the country. Unemployment levels have hit the highest number on record, 32.6%. What sectors actually did gain jobs and where the bulk of the job losses concentrated? We'll have some answers for you at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Hannah.
We'll see you then, Rama. Well, let's now take a short break and return your sport news, including... We check out how